Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. This is Miss Lisa's YouTube channel for all things science and math. Really just the ones I want to talk about. And I want you to like, share, and subscribe because I have a goal of getting 1,000 subscribers so that I can do YouTube Live. That's what I want to do. That way I don't have to record it, put it on my phone, upload it. It just takes a long time. I want to do it fast. So anyway, what we're talking about in this video is biology. We are going through this book, Glencoe, Biology and Everyday Experience. And its number, if you want to buy it, is in some of the very first tapes, the introduction. You can find all the information there if you want to do this as a class. These tapes were primarily designed for homeschoolers to do this as a class, but if you like the way I explain things, come on in, you're welcome, join us. So where we are in biology is we are on Unit 3 in this book, where we're going to start talking a little bit about biochem, and then we're going to, we've talked about the different kingdoms, and we've talked about what is biology, and now we're going to go back and kind of look at it chemically. So this chapter is about nutrition. It's about food. We all love food, right? Got my coffee right here, warming my hands because it's a little chilly. I'm in Georgia, and usually Georgia is hot until the end of November. You're usually wearing shorts and flip-flops till the end of November where I live, but we've got a little cold snap. I feel like that we're up north somewhere because it's a little chilly in September. At the end of September, but still September. Usually it's just as hot as August here. And August can be over 100 degrees. So, so anyway, we're going to talk about food. Okay, so nutrition. What is nutrition? It's your food. It's what you eat, and you have to eat to live. So they used to say, always eat to live, don't live to eat. And so food is a big deal. People are constantly trying to eat healthier or lose weight or gain weight or provide the best nutrition. So the food industry, of course, just providing food is huge, but also the diet industry, trying to get people to have the nutrition to weight ratio they want is big money, big money. So the more we know about it, the better we'll do. Now, your book, okay, so it seems like I say this every chapter. Some of these things are controversial. I do, don't I? And there's some things that's actually a little bit controversial about this that we're going to talk about as we get more into the chapter. But food is what we eat, and it has nutrients in it. Nutrients are chemicals that our cells need. The study of the nutrients and how your body uses them is called nutrition. You could grow up and be a nutritionist. It's a job you can have. Also, there are 6 kinds of food you need, and we're going to talk about elements also, but these are kinds of food. You need proteins, like meats, fats, like butter, carbohydrates, which are sugars and starches, vitamins, which are compounds. They are chemicals joined together into compounds. Minerals, which are elements on the periodic table, things like iron and calcium, they're elements, not compounds. And water, which is a compound, but it's a special compound because it's so important, H2O. Each of the 6 nutrients are going to be talked about in this chapter. So first of all, the 3 food types, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. So proteins are chains of amino acids, so they're polymers, and they are these big chemicals made out of the elements that make up living things. So I think I'm going to go ahead and explain this to you before we go on, so you can kind of get in your head what is an element, what is a molecule, and how this all fits. Okay, so elements are on the periodic table. And there's they're natural up to uranium. It's the largest natural element, and they are one thing. They're the smallest bit of matter that retains the characteristics of that piece of matter. If you break it down beyond that, you get protons, neutrons, and electrons, and they're all the same. So I sort of always think of it like Legos, that you can build things out of Legos. Well, the things that the atoms are built out of are protons, neutrons, and electrons. And what makes one element different from another is the number of protons. These are positively charged bits of matter in the nucleus of an atom. And depending on the number of protons, it makes it different. So like gold has a different number than carbon, that has a different number than lead. And it's the number of protons that make it what it is. And the atom is the smallest bit of matter that has that characteristic. So if we had one atom of gold, it would be yellow and shiny. If we have one atom of oxygen, it would be a gas at room temperature, and you can breathe it in. So those are the elements, and they are uncombined. So the elements that you need for life, I say, is chnops. I'm going to write it on the board behind me. Okay, we'll get rid of Miss Lisa, and I'll put it up here. Chnops. C-H-N-O-P-S. That S should be big. S. Chnops. There it is. What this is these are the elements of life that you are made out of. The main ones are carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. Chnops. But then you also need for life 33 elements altogether. You have to have some calcium. You have to have some iron. These are your minerals that you go to the store and buy. Oh, I think I need a calcium supplement. You go buy it. And there's 33 of them you need. Some of them you only need trace. That means you only need just a tiny, tiny bit of it. And the weird one is you need a tiny bit of arsenic. Do you know what arsenic is? It will kill you. It's a poison. There used to be a movie back a long time ago, like maybe in the 50s. I don't know. Maybe in the 40s. It could have been before that. But it was about old ladies, and it was called Arsenic and Old Lace, and they were killing people. These old ladies were murdering old ladies, and they were killing people with arsenic. So arsenic, if you have enough of it, which is not much at all, like I think they hid it in their ring and then open up the ring and put the poison in, you know, and that much, a ring amount will kill you. But to live, you need just a tiny, tiny bit, but you get it in your food. It's already there. So it's not like you have to go buy arsenic supplement. You'd kill yourself. So these are the elements that you have to have. Some of them you have to have put together into compounds. So proteins are compounds, and they're what's called a polymer, meaning they're big complex molecules made out of little parts, which are called monomers. And the monomers, the little parts that make them up, are amino acids. And what's the opposite of amino acid? A nice young base. It's a chemistry joke. It's kind of lame because acids and bases are opposite. But there aren't many science jokes, so we have to tell them when they're here. It's compulsory. We just have to. All right, so that's proteins. The next one that I want to talk about is different than the order of your book, is carbohydrates. And carbohydrates are sugars and starch, and they are also polymers. They are made of simple sugars. So you put simple sugars together and you get complex sugars. And depending on how they're joined, they're a sugar or a starch. They've got these little bonds that go between them, and they can either go like this or they could go like that, like one up, one down kind of thing. But depending on how they are joined, the simple sugars, it's either it makes it different. So on your lab this week, one of the things you're going to do is that it wants you to do a thing where you test for sugars, and you have to buy this special test. And I never bother buying the special test. What I do instead is I give the kids all a soda cracker, a saltine, and I have them chew it. And if you chew it long enough, your teeth will start breaking down the starches, this carbohydrate that is starch. It'll start breaking it down into the simple sugars, and it will start tasting sweet. So I just make the kids chew a cracker till it turns to sugar in their mouth, and they can see how starches are made out of sugars. And that's why, sugar and starch, they're very related. They're both polymers. Okay, the next one is fats. And all of these are giant molecules, these foods that we eat. And the fats, are also big molecules, and these are things like butter and oils. And there is saturated and unsaturated fats. And what it is saturated or unsaturated with is doop, hydrogen. So if all the bonds in the fats are single bonds, meaning they only are sharing 2 electrons, if you remember any chemistry, if you've had any chemistry, but they just have one single bond between all the carbons, then they are saturated with hydrogens. Because this is our molecule of life, this is what we're made out of, and this is what our food is made out of, including our fats. So if it's all single bonds, then there's lots and lots of hydrogens in it. And it is hard for your body to break that down. You would think single bonds would be easy to break, but they're not. It's the double and triple bonds that are easier for your body to break down. So if it has got double and triple bonds in it, then it's an unsaturated fat, and it's easier for your body to break down. So the saturated fats are things that are solids at room temperature. Things like lard and butter, grease that is solid at room temperature. And those are the things that, in general, some people think are not as good for you. And remember I told you it'd be controversial? Man, is nutrition controversial. There are people who are like, no, butter's great, lard's great. And then there's other fats that are liquid at room temperature, and those are your oils. And it is because that they are unsaturated, and some of them are polyunsaturated, which means it has many double and triple bonds in it, and it's easier for your body to break that down. So they're considered more healthy fats, things like olive oil. But then you get this is the controversy. I'll tell you what it is. I'm not going to tell you which way to think. But the controversy is that it is believed that fake fats are bad for you. So margarine, so some people say margarine's bad for you. Anything that is a fake fat, margarine is where they've taken liquid oil and hydrogenated it and made it be solid at room temperature where naturally it's not. So it's been a fat that's been manipulated by science. So there are people who say that's terrible for you, and other people say no, it's good because it's plant-based instead of animal-based. So there's opinions about margarine. There's also something called trans fats where they're like margarine things, and it's stuff like Crisco, where people think that's bad, real bad for your heart. And then other people are like, no, it's good because it's plant-based. And other people are like, no, it's bad because it's a natural. So that's part of the controversy there with the fats. And then there's another whole different idea of nutrition. Your book is going to take a traditional view of nutrition, that eating lots of carbohydrates is good, limit your protein next, and then very little fats. Well, there are all these people who instead, they are keto people. And they feel like carbohydrates are bad and that proteins and fats are good, and that you should eat more proteins and fats and vegetables and that are very watery. They don't have a lot of one thing or the other in them, and but they have fiber. And don't eat the carbohydrates, where your book says, oh, you should be eating carbohydrates. And there are people who absolutely disagree with all that. So if you want to see people fuss about stuff online, go look at some of the discussions about nutrition, because there are definitely camps with opinions about what's good for you and what's not. And it's not even like the doctors believe one thing and the pharmacists believe something else. No, there are doctors on every team. There are doctors that are on team keto, and there are doctors that are on team breakfast cereal carbohydrates. And there are people who believe that because the cereal industry and the grain industry is so big in America, that money has corrupted the science. And so they're like, oh, you can't believe that study. They were just paid by the Quaker Oats people or whatever. I don't know what to think. I'm not gonna tell you what I even think, but I will tell you one thing I do think. I think the more natural you can eat, the better it is. That if it's not a food that your great-great-grandma would have known as a food, then maybe you shouldn't eat it. Um, there's a thing where there is artificial cheese. You can buy artificial cheese. If you go look at some of the cheese pizzas in the grocery store, some of them have on them, you can read artificial cheese. Well, see, artificial cheese is not real food. So I think you shouldn't eat artificial cheese. Now, don't get mad at me if you love artificial cheese. You go eat it. I am not a nutritionist. I am not a doctor. I do not play one on TV. But my personal opinion is that if it's a real food, like green beans, then that's probably all right for you. And if it's not a real food, if it's something odd like Cheetos, maybe it's not as good for you. Green beans are probably better for you than Cheetos. Or that maybe milk's better for you than Coca-Cola, but maybe not. There are people who are like, no dairy. Dairy's terrible. Never eat dairy. Every food I can think of, there are people who are for it and against it. So you're going to have to decide this one on your own. Talk to your mama. Whatever she says, that's what you should probably do. Whichever team mama's on, go with that one because she's going to be the one cooking your food. So eat that. All right, so we talked about the different kinds of food. I think it's very interesting. If you look on page 185, it shows you what males and females are made of, and it's different. Women have more fat. It's because our bodies are made to protect and insulate a baby, that we need a little more fat. When I was pregnant with one of my kids, I absolutely fell down smack. Good thing I had some fat to protect that baby because, he could have gotten really hurt with me falling on him. I was out in the garden. I had this little wall around my garden. Why I thought I was going to be graceful enough to jump over this little fence, 8 months pregnant. What was I thinking? I got to jump over the fence. Of course, I missed it. Boom. Land on the baby in the middle of the garden. Don't do that. Anyway, he turned out okay as far as we know. They're all like, late teens, early 20s now. So hopefully they're okay. They survived their mama. Hopefully I had enough fat to protect that baby. All right. So your book also says, showing how much nutrition you need of each area. It says you mostly need carbohydrates. Second, you need, they say fat. Third, protein. Fourth, fiber. As far as how much your body uses each nutrient each day. Now, on page 187, there's a lab where you break down milk and you find out what milk's made out of. Milk is sort of the perfect food because it's, you can live off of it when you're a baby. That's all you need is your mama's milk. But so it calls for an enzyme to break the milk down. Use vinegar. Just use regular old vinegar. It works, and you don't have to buy anything special from the biology company. So you're going to do that lab. It's pretty fun. You add the vinegar, it gets lumpy, and then you squeeze it out, and you separate the liquids from the solids in milk. All right, so you can do that lab. That'll be fun. The next thing is vitamins. And remember, vitamins are molecules that you need. There's a list of some of the ones you need on page 189. Vitamin A, retinol, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, ascorbic acid. So these are all vitamins that you need to have to be healthy. So these are things you get naturally in food, but sometimes we don't eat perfect. Sometimes too many Cheetos and not enough green beans. And you take vitamins a lot of times can help. One time my husband had gotten very unhealthy and we got him some special vitamins, and boy did it make a difference in his health. I mean, he had a cough for months, and he started taking those vitamins. The cough was gone in a week. It was amazing. So I think some of it's quackery that's out there, possibly, people trying to sell their snake oil, their vitamin, but this really worked. And they were expensive vitamins, and of course, they were supposed to be made special or whatever, but I can't argue with the results. It got him well. I see pictures of him right before he started taking those vitamins, and he looked so pale and unhealthy. And then you see pictures of him after the vitamins. It's like, wow, he definitely had some nutritional inadequacies. Too many Cheetos, not enough green beans. Too many Little Debbies. Nothing against any of those companies. Please don't come after me. They're great for a treat, but maybe not as healthy as green beans. All right. So the government puts out a recommended daily allowance, how many of each thing you're supposed to get, and based on a normal diet. And they tell you, then foods are labeled with the percent that those foods have in them. So when I taught chemistry, the last time I was teaching in public school, I'm back in public school now, but we did a thing where we did a unit on the chemistry of food, and we would do a thing where we would write down everything we ate for a certain amount of time, and then we would analyze it and see, well, how much protein are we getting? How much iron are we getting? How much of all these things? And then we would compare it to the recommended daily allowance and do the math and see how were we doing. Were we getting more? Were we getting less? How were we on the recommended daily allowance? Well, I was a vegetarian at that time. I was not a vegan. I still had dairy products and things like that, but I didn't eat meat. And I was pregnant. And so I did decide to do it with the kids. So I kept my food diary, and while they were all sitting there doing their math, I sat there and did my math. And then they came and said, Miss Blackburn, how'd you do? And I did terrible. It was awful. My nutrition was awful. I know that there are people who are good vegetarians who are careful to get the protein they need and all that. I was not. I was a terrible vegetarian. I was extremely malnourished. I was underweight and terribly malnourished. And I called my husband up and I'm like, we got to start eating meat. Whoppers are back on the menu because this baby needs some food. And so that was the day I quit being a vegetarian, was the day I did a diet analysis. And I mean, my kids who I taught, my students, were appalled that my diet was the worst of. And they were teenagers. These are kids who are eating a Snicker bar for lunch. And my diet was the worst of all of them as a vegetarian. So watch out. Like, if you're going to be a vegetarian or alter your diet in some way, be careful. Because if you don't eat meat, it is hard to get complete proteins. Plant-based proteins usually are incomplete, and you can study that more if you're thinking about being a vegetarian. And I wasn't even vegan, and I was that terrible. I was just a vegetarian. I mean, I had eggs still, I had milk, I had cheese, I ate butter, I ate all of that stuff, and I was still incredibly malnourished. And I really felt better once I started eating meat again. So I was bad at it. So if you're going to be a vegetarian or something, you got to do your research, got to do your homework, and make sure you're not being malnourished the way I was. All right. So you'll be reading about that in your book. We talked about minerals. Those are the elements like iron, copper, magnesium, iodine, sodium. You have to have all of them. And I was going to tell you, one of the ones that you can be depleted in is magnesium. And a lot of times when you have leg cramps, it could be that you need potassium, where people will say, oh, eat a banana, but it could be magnesium. So sometimes you will eat those bananas and you're still having the leg cramps. Sometimes it's magnesium instead of potassium. But if you have too much magnesium, it can be a laxative. So you might have a problem there. So, in moderation, if you need some magnesium. But yeah, you can buy those supplements too. So all of those things, you need to research it. Okay, and then the next super, super important thing, you'll die without it, is water, H2O. So you have to have water to live. And all the foods you have water in it, but you also have to drink about 2 liters a day. So what is a balanced diet? It's controversial. In your book, on page 192, they showed the food pyramid, which is the base is grains and cereals. They say you should have 6 to 11 servings. Then come fruit, 2 to 4, vegetables, 3 to 5, meat, poultry, and fish, 2 to 3, milk, yogurt, and cheese, 2 to 3, and then fats and oils used sparingly. But people who do the keto diets, they say, no, no, no. They're all about the fat and the protein and not the carbohydrates. So balanced diets, different people say different things are balanced. So do your own research or do what your mama says. All right, calories. Calories is a measure of energy in chemistry. And in chemistry, a calorie is the amount of energy needed to heat up 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius. Now, that's not the same thing as food calories. Food calories, it is how much heat it takes to heat up 1,000 grams of water 1 degree Celsius. So the calories in food are actually kilocalories. They're 1,000 calories. So if it says your Snicker bar is 240 calories, it's really 240,000 calories. But they changed it on food because they thought people would see the Snicker bar as 240,000 calories and not buy it. So food calories is a capital C. Chemistry and physics calories is a little c. Instead of writing kilocalorie, they just made a big C just to try to get us to buy the Snicker bar. Remember, I told you food is a big industry. They want us to buy the Snicker bar. All right, so the book talks about that. So your other lab that you're supposed to do is which foods contain sugar. I want you to just do a soda cracker and chew it till it turns sweet. Do not swallow. You're going to want to swallow, but you got to chew, 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 chew. And eventually the spit in your mouth will start breaking down that starch into simple sugars and you can taste it. So calorie content of food, it talks about how they compare. If you have equal mass of bread and ham, the ham has more calories than the bread. If you have equal mass in grams of bread and butter, the butter has way more calories than the bread. So fats are very nutrient dense. They're very calorie dense. So you do have to be careful if you're eating a high calorie diet and you're eating more calories than what you're expending, then it will end up being stored as fat in your body. And it's not healthy to have too much fat. It's not healthy to have no fat, but it's not healthy to have too much fat. And it can cause a lot of problems. So for proper weight, you need to be eating a diet where you are not storing a lot of your food as fat. And different activities can help keep you healthy too. And not just to get rid of your extra food you ate, but also just to have muscle tone and all of that, you need to exercise. So there's a little chart in your book and they have different activities that you can do and how many calories it burns. One of the things I found out is I started working out. I know you're going, really? Yes. See, look, there's a little muscle right there. And I started lifting weights. And I built more muscle and I started losing weight because muscle burns more food than fat does. So it's like, wow, I really didn't do it to try to lose weight. I did it because as I age, let's not talk about it, the osteoporosis runs in my family. So the one thing that's good for osteoporosis is weight-bearing exercise. So I started bench pressing weight. I know you are going, really? Yes, I do. I do 3 reps of 10 each, so 30 times 50 pounds. And then my max is like maybe 85. It's not very much. But, it's probably going to be enough that it will help me not get osteoporosis. So I lift weights, I run, I work out with other workouts too. So trying to stay healthy. A lot of heart disease runs in my family. One time I was running at the track. We have a track that we can go run at here, and I was running on the track, and somebody said, "What are you training for?" And I was like, "To outlive my dad," because my dad died young of his first heart attack, and every year it gets younger, meaning that as I get closer to that age, it's like, oh man, was he young. So I want to be as healthy as possible, and you can do that by eating a balanced diet, exercising, maintaining a healthy body weight. All of those things can help make you more healthy. Is it a guarantee? Nope, there are no guarantees. There are young, healthy people who never ate anything wrong, who worked out all the time, and they can get some terrible disease and be gone young too. So, but you can improve your odds. So I encourage all of you to do that. And come back next time and we're going to talk about digestion. More than you ever probably want to know about digestion. So like, share, subscribe. Science is great. See you next time.